is Kudzai, and I want to welcome you once again to On the Money, a financial education program brought to you by Old Mutual. This is a program that is premised on the big five, which are animals that are found in Africa. And from each of these animals, we can learn a specific aspect or characteristic around how best you and I can manage our finances or manage our money. And these big five, as we said last time, are the leopard, the elephant, the lion, the rhino, as well as the buffalo. Last time we looked at the leopard and we drew in on how it is able to build strong visions, to have a financial plan. We learned how when the leopard is hunting, it is extremely stealthy. It starts off by seeing the animal that it wants to reach out to, and then step by step, it works towards that particular vision. Today, we want to be looking at the secret of the elephant. It is said that an elephant never forgets. And this is what helps it to be able to survive in the jungle. Because it can remember the last place it got water, the last place it got food, and even perhaps sometimes the last places it encountered danger. And that knowledge helps it to survive and thrive in the place that it is living in. Now, you and I are not like the elephant because we are not able to remember everything. However, knowledge is extremely important when it comes to managing our money. In fact, one man is quoted as saying that an investment in knowledge is the best dividend. And so for you to be able to build powerful, strong, positive money habits, it is necessary that you start from a position of knowledge. And therefore, the secret of the elephant is budgeting. What is budgeting? Budgeting is simply where you come up with a plan on how best you can manage your money. You look at your income, you look at your expenses, and the intention is for you to be able to balance. The idea with preparing a budget is that it helps you to plan for your money before you've spent it. You plan first on paper, and then you leave the things that you've noted. That is the secret of the elephant. One may ask, why is it important that I budget? A budget helps you to plan your money in the right way. You can prioritize and see the things that you require at any point in time because there are always priorities. More often than not, there is a limited amount of income. But when it comes to the expense side, there are so many things that one needs to pay for. In addition, a budget is a very useful tool that helps you to take control of your finances. So here are the steps that you can take in order to come up with a budget. The first thing you need to do is to learn what you earn, to appreciate the income that you have. Now, I know that in the world we are living in, there are a lot of things that may be happening. Ideally, many people get their money from a salary, but some of you are running small enterprises. Some of you are self-employed. Some of you have money coming in from investments. There are many different ways that one can have an income. When you begin to do a budget, the very first step you must take is to know how much you have available to spend. Because the secret is simple. You want to make sure that you do not spend more than you have in terms of income. So step number one is to learn what you earn, know your income. Step number two is to know what you owe. You cannot be able to build a budget that only has one side, which is what you are receiving, your income. You then want to compare that with your expenses. And when it comes to expenses, there are different types of expenses that we encounter in day-to-day living. There are fixed expenses, things you're going to have to pay for no matter what. There are things we'll pay for all the time, like rent. You always have to pay for things like groceries. You always have to pay for things like utilities. Those things are always going to be there. But there are also some expenses that are variable. And variable expenses may include things that can change by consumption. So perhaps the amount of airtime you're using this month may not necessarily be the same that you may use in this month that is to come or months to follow. And so it is important as you begin to build up a budget that after learning that which you earn, you begin to note that which you need to pay for, which are called expenses. Step number three is where you begin to reflect on the income and the expenses. Remember, the idea behind a budget is for you to balance. You want to make sure that your income is going to match with the expenses for that period. So if your income in total, from whatever things you make your money from, is totaling $500, you want to make sure at the end of the day that your expenses as well are not more than the same $500. And so you will begin to revisit everything line by line and interrogate the things that you can either reduce or things that you can completely remove. When it comes to things like fixed costs that we spoke to earlier, you can't do much when it comes to rent, it's a fixed cost. You can't do much when it comes to utilities, they're a fixed cost. But there are things that are variable that you and I can play around with. We can reduce our consumption of fuel perhaps. You may reduce perhaps the clothes that you're buying that month. You could take a little bit of a knock in terms of groceries. So it's not that you don't eat, but you just choose to say, from what I have right now, I might need to reduce on groceries. It could be a handbag or it could be a pair of shoes. You won't die. The idea is that you reflect and ensure that you do a balancing act until your income and your expenses are coming together and balancing. Step number 4 is extremely simple. This is where you revisit your budget again after having reduced some things and removed some things to see whether you finally balance. And so if you initially began with $500 in income and you had perhaps $575 in expenses, after doing the reflection program, you now draw up a budget where you have $500 in income and $500 in expenses. And we call that balancing. Balancing in terms of figures, but also remember to make sure that in the things you are paying for, you also balance in terms of life. It's all nice and good to put in the important things of life, make sure rent is paid, make sure fees are paid, but it's also important to make sure that in that budget, there is a line for joy. I personally believe that balance also speaks to you being able to live a balanced life where you can pay for important things, but at the same time, you can also pay for things that give you joy. It doesn't have to be a lot, but as long as you put in that thing in that budget, then you can be able to account for that money and spend it without guilt. The last step seems to be the simplest, but that's where all the hard work is. It is to actually live the budget. Because many people can draw up a budget, give them income, give them their expenses, or they do the quick math. Before you know it, they're balancing. The question is, can you take the things you've put on paper and be able to live them in real life? That is where the real battle is. After all has been said and done in terms of creating your budget, you've got to go out there and live according to that plan you've made. And so a budget can be made for the month, it can be done for a week, it can also be done annually if you receive your income annually, like for example, many farmers do. What is important is to match your budgeting with your specific timeline. If you do this process several times and you still cannot be able to budget and balance your income and your expenses, that is a simple and a clear indicator that you need to relook your entire lifestyle. You might not be living in the area that you can afford. So think about changing where you live. You might not be transporting yourself in the way that you can afford. So perhaps think about relooking how you transport yourself from place to place. It may mean parking the car for a season perhaps and using public transport because that is what you can afford, and then maybe only driving on weekends or when you need to go to events at night. Keeps you safe, but at the same time keeps your pocket in check. Let's also be mindful that there are two important aspects to any budget: the income side and the expenses side. There truly are moments where when you've relooked everything, there isn't much you can do to keep reducing or keep removing because you'll be left with nothing. It's important to put it in mind that if your budget is completely failing to balance, you may need to also begin to think around increasing on the income side. In an inflationary environment, many times people will ask, is a budget useful? How do I make it practical in a place where prices are continuing to go up? The secret is fairly simple. You want to make sure that as soon as you receive income, you budget for it. And not only do you immediately budget for it, you immediately go and make the purchases that you should purchase and make the payments that you should pay. That way, you can be able to secure some kind of value. It's also important to think around budgeting in an inflationary environment in this way. If your income is $1,000, don't budget for $1,000 because you never know what may happen between the time you receive the income and the time you actually spend. Preferably try to budget for about $700 if your earnings are $1,000, which is about 30% of your actual earnings. This helps you to create a very comfortable cushion for yourself such that when you make a budget on $700, if there are any changes, you have a cushion of about $300. If there are no changes, well, congratulations to you. You have $300 extra to spend. And so this is the secret of the elephant, where we are simply saying you need knowledge in order to manage your money better. If you develop a budget this month, a budget next month, and a budget in the third month, you'll have an idea of the level of spending that can sustain you within your chosen lifestyle. The budget is a great guide to help you get started in managing your money. It is a great short-term plan. It will give you knowledge that will help you in the time to come. Here's one last thing. It is also important that once you have done your budget in the local currency, you convert it to a currency that is easier for you to track going forward. That way, you can be able to say, as an individual, as a family, as a small or even a big business, this is the level of income we require to sustain us according to our selected lifestyle every month. And that will also help you to have something to look forward to or a target in terms of the income that you must generate. Here is what we want you to do. Take a pen and a paper, sit down and begin to put these things in practice. Note down that which you earn. List your expenses, compare the two. If they don't balance, revisit every line item one by one. Reduce some things, completely take away some others, until you achieve balance at the very least on paper. And after all has been said and done, go out and live a guilt-free life where you can spend very nicely, knowing that it is according to the plan. Thank you so much for watching On The Money, brought to you by Old Mutual. My name is Kudzai. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do join us next time as we look at the secret of the lion. Cheers!